All right, Larry. The first game we're going to talk about tonight is Spellcasters. Spellcasters is designed by Aaron Weisblum, Norman Wood, and published by R&R Games, one of my favorite publishing companies. I just see them to just do it for me. Party game-wise, a few of their strategy games, just great, and then just like dexterity games, man.
Yeah.
And then cool little stuff like this, too. So, and then Hanabi, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Goodness. Larry, tell us about Spellcasters. I have played Spellcasters. I played it at BGG-Con last year, like about right after it came out. Dan DeLorenzo, one of the two brother owners of R&R Games, taught me and my wife how to play. We played a few 3-player games, and then I played 2-player games as well. But you've actually played 4-player game too. So tell us about the game, how it works, a few of the rules, stuff like that.
Okay. All right. So basically it is a duel between two wizards. And you have 2 resources, one sapphires, which are little blue crystals, and then life, which is just little yellow crystals.
Yeah, energy, right?
Yeah, energy. So you start out with 10 yellow life crystals and 2 blue crystals. In all the player versions.
Yeah.
In 2-player, you're 1-on-1. In 3-player, you're 2-on-1. And in 4-player, you're 2-on-2. So
I can't remember. In 3-player, do you share life and energy, or
yes,
crystals and energy?
The team will share life. What it is in the 2-on-1, whoever's the 1 player gets 6 cards and 10 life and 2 sapphires to themselves.
Okay.
The other team get 3 cards each, and that's the thing they can't do is look at each other's cards.
Okay.
They share a pool of life and
sapphires.
and sapphires, and they can also activate each other's cards. What they can't do is look at each other's hands
Okay.
and pre-play that. So anyway, to win the game, you either need to get 15 blue sapphires or take away your opponent's 10 life. And how you do this is through using one of the 4 card colors. So out in the middle of the table, there's 4 little placards, little place stations for your cards, and they are red, yellow, green, and blue. And the red ones are attacks. They help you to take your opponent's life away.
Yeah.
It's called draining in this game. The blue ones help you get blue.
Blue sapphires, which are what you need to get to win.
Yes. Green ones let you kind of do special card effects, break the rules. They do a lot of card manipulation.
Yeah, they're conjuring cards,
Yeah.
which are like your spells.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's yellow.
Yeah, yellow is a healing, and they give you back life.
Okay, cool.
So basically, you start out, it's a deck of 60, and I think 15 of each color, and you go through, each person gets 3 to start out with, and at the beginning of your turn, you'll draw, and you have 2 actions. So on a turn, you can only activate a card once, but you can play a card, activate it, you can draw another card, and activate a card that's already laid down. You could play 2 cards and not activate anything. You could do a variety.
You could draw 2 cards.
Yeah,
not
draw
do anything
2.
else. The only thing you can't do twice is activate.
Yeah, you can't activate any more than 1 per turn. So you're going through and you're doing so. There's kind of a cool directional thing going on. So only activate cards that are facing your direction. So you lay down. So basically, if we're facing each other, I'll lay down cards and they'll be oriented where I can read them.
Yeah.
And you couldn't activate those on your side of the table. So there's kind of an interesting dynamic where you're taking control of these of various colors. So if I had 3 cards facing my way and you had 1 facing yours, you'd be a little bit more limited in what you could do on a given turn. So it kind of there's this cool back and forth going on where you're blocking and sort of building up your board, but they can affect it in a lot of ways at any time. So.
Yeah, that's the kind of the coolest thing. And there's not really any long strategies about what cards you're going to have out there because they get covered up so quick.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have a plan for the next turn and it gets covered up.
For sure.
But because this is a really fast game.
Very.
I mean, 15 minutes would be a long game of this.
Yeah.
But that's what the coolest thing about the game is to me is you're trying to do things on your side of the board. So say you've got a yellow and a blue card you really want to play, but they've been hitting you with this red card over and over. You know, they draw a card, hit it, draw a card, hit it. And then you just have to sometimes
cover that.
Try and get a red card. You know, you weren't planning on drawing cards, but you got to draw 2 cards trying to get a red card to cover it up. So you're playing like a real defense game, trying to constantly strategically block what they're doing and defend against it while also having an offensive strategy to either get your stuff up or their stuff down.
Yeah. Oh, another thing. There's another little special. One thing we didn't talk about is there's ongoings. On some of the cards, they have a little red arrow. And once you get those out there, they do it automatically at the beginning of your turn, whatever their action is. So those are really good, too. Those really can
mess
up people's stuff. So they usually get covered up pretty quickly in the games we played.
Yeah, and there's some things that you can get a lot of cards in your hand, but you can also have a ton of options because a lot of the cards are do this or this.
Yes.
And there's also sacrifice this yourself to get this thing.
Yes.
Or tell your opponent to give you this or this happens to them.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of choices to be made, whether positive for yourself or negative for your opponent.
Yeah, it is really cool. There's 2 basic modes to victory, and sometimes, man, I think you told me about a 15-second game. You just got the right layout and boom, 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 3 times got 5. Oh, you said...
Yeah, it was about 45 seconds, a minute long game.
Yeah,
and,
just
boom,
boom,
it
boom,
was
boom.
fast.
Did that 10 damage and knocked them out.
So what do you think about the game?
I love it. It was really popular at my house. I played with the kids. They all enjoyed it a lot. Then the kids got their uncle to play with them, and they all played many times. And then finally got my wife to play, and, it was tooth and nail getting her to play. But once we played about 6 or 7 in a row. So.
Cool. So you played this game a lot more than me at this point.
Oh, yeah. I'd say I played at least 15 or 16 games myself, and then at my house they played even more.
So tell me what you thought about the game across the different player counts, because like I said, I've played 2 and 3. I personally, the 2 I thought was better, but I didn't mind the 3, but you said you didn't really like the 3.
Well, we played 3-player twice, and the first time we played might have turned me off a little bit to it because we played a little bit wrong. We were playing where the one went, and then both of us on the team went.
Ah, gotcha.
And it was supposed to be they go, one of us goes, they go, one of us goes. So it was supposed to alternate, and that's
a pretty big effect there.
Yeah, we clobbered them really quick. The second one, we clobbered them pretty quickly, but not as quickly. So, I'm not sure. The 3 players where it feels least. The thing I didn't like most about it is that there's cards I noticed that they have asterisk marked on them, but those cards change in either the 3 or the 4-player game, and they're very slight. Most of them are obvious once you do it, but when we first noted it, some of these cards changed, then we'd have to look it up when one of those cards arose. But that's pretty minor beef. I mean, it works pretty well across. I can imagine it being better 3-player game if the 1 is much better at playing.
That's true, too. And, maybe you're right, because, my wife and I playing on a team at the convention won the 3 games we played. So maybe you're right. Maybe it is just impossible to be balanced.
Yeah, well, it's just harder to be balanced. 2-on-2 works great. 1-on-1 is great. I think that's where it really shines is the 2-player game. 3 just didn't, there's no real way to play it 1-on-1, so they had to figure out this versus thing, and it just doesn't feel as balanced overall.
4 players to me would kind of start to make that game feel really thin because there's not enough to that game for the length of time 4 players might take.
Well, being able to activate your team members' cards really is what makes it. There's a lot of even more of a flurry of stuff going on.
Yeah.
But if that right action in combination with something you have in your hand, if your opponent, not your opponent, your partner lays down just that right card and you have the right card in your hand to get a great combo off of it, man, it can really, that's when the 4-player really shines, is when you get those unintentional combos.
Okay.
Yeah, I think 1-on-1 is where it really shines the best, and 2-on-2 is basically just a glorified 1-on-1.
Yeah,
but still fun.
Cool. It's there's a few little issues for me. The theme is such a generic. They're trying to tap into that Magic the Gathering, Mage Wars, Summoner Wars market, and it's just unnecessary. It could have been. They could have done any cool, interesting theme. It could have been a Western theme, or don't do anything. Pirates or zombies, but literally anything. Yeah. Anything.
Yeah.
And to use such a generic theme, and on top of the generic theme, to use such generic artwork.
Yeah.
I won't say it's bad artwork because I couldn't draw a fraction of how whoever drew that draws, but it's not great artwork. It's very
humdrum kind of.
Yeah, it feels cheap. It feels like cheap artwork.
Isn't it Tom Vassell? He came up with a funny name for the real generic fantasy art.
I don't know.
I think it's in Tiny Epic, either Kingdoms or Defenders. He kind of lambasted them for that generic fantasy stuff. He did,
Defenders, for sure.
Yeah.
And also...
there's another game that he...
Recently, it was another fantasy game that he really gave it to pretty bad. Oh, Harbor. He did the same thing to another Scott Alms game. But what was the term he used?
I don't remember, but it seemed like he had a really good phrase for it, and it is totally across the board. I mean, you see it everywhere. Like,
yeah, he's got his phrases, the like JASE, just another soulless euro, and trading in the Mediterranean, stuff like that. So, but yeah, I mean, the theme and the art to me were just completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have almost done just like a cool Art Deco thing and this just be a card game with actions,
that would have been cool.
I mean, it could have been anything because the game is interesting enough with the cool back and forth of the offense and defense. I mean, there's not a lot of really quick filler card games where you're required to play defense too.
Yeah.
And it's such a filler that it doesn't need to be. I don't know, man. It just seems, the theme to me seems unnecessary.
Yeah.
And it just makes me I don't even like looking at the cards,
Yeah.
I like the game enough that I don't care.
Their quality is a little low too. Like, we noticed, you pulled them out. You'd played a couple times, I think.
No, I hadn't.
Oh, that was new.
I pulled them out,
Shuffled them brand
shuffled
new.
them once, and they already started chipping. The cards were chipping
Yeah.
pretty badly too. And I mean, they took a beating just the first few shufflings we gave them.
Yeah.
And I don't care about that kind of stuff, and I noticed that.
Yeah, yeah.
So I mean, it is a very cheaply made game, but it's also, I think, a pretty cheap game.
Yeah.
And it's a filler. It's not my favorite filler I have. I have a lot of other fillers that I'd much rather play.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're someone who uses Flux as a filler, this is a better game than Flux. This is it's not a bad little game. Cool back and forth. I mean, the actions are interesting enough, and there's so many options to the actions. That's what I really like. Is your hand of cards, even if it's 4, could present you with 8 different options on your turn.
Yeah, those green cards are dastardly sometimes, what they allow you to do, and there's some really cool little green cards in there.
Yeah, and think of how many options you could really have. You've got this or this cards in your hand that you could play activate, and you've got at least anywhere from 1 to 4, maybe 0, but 1 to 4 cards facing you that you could activate also. You've got a lot of options on your turn. And you've also, I mean, you can decide early on, like in our game that we played, I decided early on, I'm going to try and get my, sapphires up instead of trying to get their stuff down. So I went more for a self-healing strategy than a attacking strategy against you,
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of different, it's just crazy with a game like this that you would look at and think like, that there's so much to it. I mean, it's not like there's a ton to it.
No.
And it's not the greatest game in the world, but
It does have a good back and forth.
fun little game. If you see it and it's a good price, I mean, I'm sure it's a good price online. Check it out. I think it's a pretty cool game.
Yeah.
Good. Thumbs up from Laird.
Yes.
You got the from Laird. So that's Spellcasters from R&R Games.